Today, our featured guest is Bill Yo. He is an award winning and best selling author, keynote speaker, business owner, and faith leader, committed to the adage that the truly educated never graduate. He has earned master's degrees in business administration and in ministry and theology. Bill engages in service work in his local communities and abroad, employing and sharing the blessings of his talents, gifts, and resources. He lives with his family and their many pets in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Now, for all our business listeners, this is an important little factoid here. Bill also is a third-generation owner and executive of Day and Zimmerman, his family's 45,000-person employee firm, a 120-year-old family business here. That's a lot of lives to be engaged with, to participate in, to be responsible for, to lead to something better. All right, Bill Yo, welcome to Broken Catholic, #1 podcast in the world for Protestants and Catholics. Praise God. Go ahead and just fill in some of the gaps in that intro, would you?
Right. Well, thank you, Joseph. It's a real honor to be here and feel very privileged to have connected with you. So, yeah, and it always sounds so weird when a bio like that is read because, boy, that's just a lot. But no, I've really been blessed to sort of walk a couple different paths as an adult. A lot of time, as you mentioned, in the business world, and continue to be very proud of a third generation owner of our family's business, and that just is truly part of who I am. And then in more recent chapters of my life, much more focus on my faith journey and elements of that. And I'm so sort of in an exciting time now where different things are all starting to come together. The walk is, step by step being illuminated for me a little bit, and just trying to do the Lord's work as best I can.
Waiting on God to guide our steps. He sure does take his time sometimes, doesn't he?
Yeah, and a lot of times the steps aren't clear, and then every once in a while he hits you with one. You're like, oh, that was an easy one to figure out. Thanks, appreciate it. You want to give him a little fist bump. So
yeah, easy clarity, difficult execution, right?
Yes.
All right, Bill, let's start off real light here, a little icebreaker. Share something personal about you that very few people in your business or ministry life actually know.
Something personal that very few people know. Okay, so I have if some of your older listeners may remember David Letterman's stupid pet trick. So people always said I had a stupid pet trick, which was I have an ability to count letters really quickly. So like on a street sign or a book cover or something like that, I have this weird, I wouldn't even call it a skill, just this weird thing where I can count the number of letters very quickly on a sign. So
has that come in handy,
not,
or has
not
it been
in
used?
the slightest.
I
No.
just want to know how you monetize that.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of like a bar bet. I haven't found a way yet. So if you do, work something out.
There you go. All right, Bill, let's get into it here. We want to hear what God's done in your life. Were you raised in faith, Christian family background? What was it?
Sure. Yeah. No, I was born into the Episcopalian tradition. I was baptized, confirmed as an Episcopalian by my parents. I'm the youngest of five. We were, I would say sort of in these mainstream or mainline Protestant traditions. We were typically observant, which would consist of, going to church most Sundays. We gave ourselves the summers off, and I never really understood why, but that still seems to be the case in a lot of mainstream Protestant traditions these days. And so, it was kind of to the point where, on the way home from church and Sunday school on Sunday morning, I'd be sort of taking the wool coat and the tie off and saying, pun intended, thank God that's over with till next week. So it was an hour a week type thing, the occasional, wedding here and there. And went to school with a few Jewish kids, so maybe a bar mitzvah thrown in. But, that was largely it. I, in my 20s, fell head over heels for a devout, lifelong Roman Catholic. My wife, Kelly, we've been married coming on 26 years now, has had a deep life of faith. Her priest was an uncle who married us. And so my wife is a grade school girl, spent part of her Saturday evenings up in the bedroom with her uncle, giving confession. So a little different than what probably most teenagers were doing in high school back in the 70s or the 80s, I guess. But so we were married. We raised our kids Catholic. I remained Episcopalian. And then I had a real turning point in my life and my faith journey when my mom died in 2015. And that really kind of set me on a different path and kind of ultimately has brought us here today. So,
Okay. Thank you for that short story there and a little background foundation. It's always so interesting to just kind of learn how God navigates, uh, his truth, his calling, his pull within our human story, within our lives. So many times we think we're in charge, and then later on we look back in retrospect and we're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what I was doing. But somehow God weaved it all together and we got this beautiful tapestry called my life.
right.
And it's just fascinating. So it sounds like that's probably where you're at right now. But staying back in time here, uh, your mom dies in 2015. What happens? Walk us through that story. How'd you
Sure.
meet? How
Yeah.
did you
So
encounter God, like in your heart, in a very real
for
way?
sure, for sure. So her death was the culmination of years of up and down health and months of more serious health issues and weeks and then days and then hours. So it was certainly her passing was not a surprise to any of us. And so we were able to say all the things we wanted to say, and it was sad, the sort of inevitable but sad experience of losing a parent, losing my mom. Her name was Mary, by the way.
Hmm.
But it was also very beautiful at the moment she passed. And it was beautiful because it was late afternoon on a June day, and there was a beautiful sunset streaming through this large sliding glass door next to her bed. It was beautiful because, we knew holding her hand the moment that her pain ended. And then for me personally, it was beautiful because I knew the moment that she went to be with God. And God pushed on my chest, literally on my heart and my chest in that moment, to the point where it was like I had the wind knocked out of me. And so I was sad and I was emotional and I was crying because I was upset my mom had died, but there was something else going on. And I wasn't aware, but I was aware of what that thing was. Getting goosebumps right now, thanks to the Holy Spirit, just recalling that. And that was God speaking to me at that time. And now with the benefit of, almost 8 years hindsight, I can, clearly say that that was the time that God said to me, Bill, it's time to change what you're doing, change your direction, a little more dedication, a little more application of your talents and gifts. So 2 months after that, I made the decision to make pretty radical changes in a 25-year career, pulled out of most of my responsibilities from a management perspective at our company. I decided to research and write and publish a book on our father and on our family, which I did. A few months after that, I'm starting to go to small group work. A few months after that, starting a small group, one of now 2 that I've started. A few months after that, oh, look, maybe a mission trip. And so all these things kept culminating, eventually culminated in my conversion to Roman Catholicism from the Episcopal tradition, and my earning a ministry and master's in theology during the pandemic at Villanova, and then publishing my second book, Unvarnished Faith, which is now #1 bestseller on Amazon. So it's been a pretty action-packed 8 years, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. So,
Wow. Okay, Bill, it's one thing to marry a Catholic. It's another thing to become one. Like, what actually happened here?
yeah, no, and that's I get that question a lot. In fact, I get that question from people like, help me understand how you could join a tradition that believes in X and Y and doesn't believe in Z. And sometimes I feel like that people have like a laminated talking points card in their wallet when they have a chance to meet a Catholic, let alone one who, at the time in my late 40s, walked into the faith eyes wide open. And it was, again, I can look at it. It was a series of people and opportunities and things that God put in my way. I talk about it in towards the end of my book. That just I got to the point where I realized not only can my family and my marriage be more complete, but most importantly, it's simply where I felt closest to God. I felt God the most present in the Catholic tradition, in the Catholic liturgy and worship, and just walking around every day as a Catholic. And I went into it eyes wide open. The fact, the week that I met with our pastor of my local parish was literally the week in 2018 when the latest round of grand jury results had been released in the state of Pennsylvania for sexual violence and cover-up by, a grossly large number of priests within the state of Pennsylvania. And so my thing was kind of, it was like everybody was heading for the exits, and I was the only person lined up at the entrance. And in some ways, maybe that was, a small way of God saying, "All right, pal, the church is on its heels a little bit in some tiny, tiny little way. Maybe here's your opportunity to make connection." But it's just, quite honestly, it's where I feel the closest to God. One of my friends in an ecumenical Bible study said, "It's great that your family, this helps your family life to become Catholic, but what about you personally?" So I went to Mass by myself, and it was really a mystical experience for me. And since then, it's been a number of things, and now I'm proud to be part of a faith with granted many warts, but any large institution has them. But as I read recently, no other organization in the world feeds more people, heals more people, or educates more people on a daily basis than the Catholic Church. So here I am, and a lot more to unpack with that. So,
I really appreciate your openness, transparency about bringing unity, right? Not only to your own family, but to your own spirit. Sometimes we're divided on the inside within ourselves, right? You're like, I hold these beliefs over here, but I'm actually walking in conflict, or I'm walking in this direction in my actual walk with the Lord. And to resolve that, I think is the calling of every human heart. And I like the way you said it is, and I offer this to you or contribute this to you, BC Nation, that go where you sense God's presence most. Go where you sense God's presence most. The way I say it in some of the coaching work I do with very successful men is, I don't have any skin in the game as to what label you identify with, what religion or faith you want to be part of. All I ask, and you should intend, is pursue truth, God's truth, wherever it leads you. And if he leads you to be a better Baptist, be the best Baptist you can before the day you die. Right. If he leads you to be a better Catholic, be the best darn Catholic you can be. And if right now you find yourself in the journey of atheism, and that's just where you are, which I once was, it's not the end, it's just a middle ground. But if you find yourself there, then at least stand for that. Like really lean into that, but keep pursuing God's truth. And as we know, as biblical Christians, God, if you continue to seek him earnestly, regardless of where you're starting, if you're atheist, he will pull you out and bring you towards him, no matter what. Right. No matter what. So I'm okay and safe in my theology to say, if you're an atheist right now, as long as you're willing to pursue truth, be the best darn atheist you can be right now, because I know that's only a temporary thing for you.
Right.
The way it was for me. Soon God will move you. It's not his power, your power. It's his power.
Yeah.
So, all right, Bill, talk to us. You wrote this book called Unvarnished Faith, and I don't want to make this about the book, but I want to know, what does that actually mean to you? What does that look like in your life?
Yeah, and thanks for asking. It's actually a perfect segue from what you were just talking about. So, the book is about a mission trip that I took and with my brother and his wife's ministry, Servants with a Heart. And I felt called during the middle of that trip to write this book. I just published my first book, which was, like I mentioned, on my father, but, kind of day 3 of the trip, the Holy Spirit sort of said, "All right, pal, kick into research mode. You're going to publish a book on this as well." And, we worked on it. It tells the story of the trip. It tells the story of the life observations, but the book is ultimately about the importance of love and relationships, and not from a Catholic perspective, not from any denominational or even necessarily from a Christian perspective, but just from a human perspective, how important it is to focus on love and relationships. So what is unvarnished faith? Well, unvarnished faith is what I experienced and saw in some of the locals that I had the pleasure and privilege of interacting with down there. And where it applies to us in the developed world and the audiences that I have a chance to talk with is, I feel like the denominational and doctrinal divides and even faith tradition divides that we have are very important. And it's where, as you said, where a Baptist would feel closest to God, where a Catholic would feel closest, where they feel they're being their most authentic self. But I contend so that's sort of the varnish we put on faith. But I contend that we pour too much light and too much energy into those relatively thin denominational and doctrinal divides, as opposed to the huge swaths of commonality we have around love and relationship, commonality about God is love, and we're called to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. however hard that may be to love our neighbors or ourselves. We're called to discern our talents and gifts to help those that are less fortunate. We're called to recognize and be grateful for the ultimate sacrifice that Christ made for us and live into that with our lives, with the witness of our lives. So these are things that I feel transcend socioeconomic boundaries. They transcend geography. They certainly transcend denominational divides. And it all really comes back to the subtitle of the book is Learning to Love with a Servant's Heart, which is a play on the ministry that brought me there, servants with a heart. But it's, if you can learn to love with the heart of a servant, that is literally walking, being the arms and legs of Christ, being the light of Christ, things that you talk about a lot. That to me is what it's all about, and that's what Unvarnished Faith is about ultimately.
BC Nation, what do you think? Do you think the labels of differences we have are more important than the commonalities of faith in Jesus that we all share? Now, you may say, well, I don't think those Catholics actually believe in Jesus. Well, that's rather presumptuous of you. You can't read another man's heart. You can only look to your own. And that's where Jesus would look down at you and say, why are you judging? Have you walked in their shoes? The judging is for the Father and Him alone. So we're meant to just embrace the person in front of us and see Jesus in them. Now, before Bill came on the show, he said, hey, I got to wrap up, within a certain amount of time because I'm going to go serve the poor people in his local community. Drive about an hour or so to go do that and feed them dinner. He's going to serve Jesus. And when someone's hungry, you don't ask them, what denomination are you before I give you this food, this nourishment? Jesus never did. So why are you? That's just a self-check. I used to do it. I was so critical the way I was raised and so judgmental. And Bill, oh, so self-righteous. So self-righteous. But then God showed me a better way, His way. And His way is love. Like you said, love first. Mm-hmm. Judge the actions, not the person. Judge the actions, not the person. Yeah? Mm-hmm. This is critical. Bill, God's calling you to something right now, okay? So you've had a successful business career. Now you're walking in a successful spiritual career, we could call it, or walk. Mm-hmm. And you don't have it all figured out. I get that. You don't have all the answers. But what answers have you picked up along the way that you're now certain of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And yes, I feel like I'm very much in a chapter of transition right now. But what I do know is that this idea of revelation and discernment, it's a toggle in my life and anybody's life. God reveals, I discern. God reveals, I discern. I admit I miss most of the revelation opportunities that come before me, but the ones that I'm blessed enough and present enough, you keep talking about presence, that I'm present enough and quiet enough to catch and discern on those. God didn't right now intend me to take what was a 25-year full-time business career and just not use that going forward anymore. God didn't intend me to take the talents and gifts He's given me, whether it's around leadership or business or strategy or communications or whatever it might be, and not apply those to the common good. So I'm in a process now of how do I discern the different things I can use? How do I employ those things as well as my material talents and gifts that I have to help the world, to make the world a better place. And right now that happens to be with the kinds of things I'm doing around this book, around speaking, around opportunities to go serve. And I'm trying to be open to, this could be the conversation that might open up an exciting new chapter, or the one this afternoon, or the next one, or the next one, or the next one, of where things might go. But if I can just remain present, and as we talked about, if I can just surrender to God's will in terms of what I should be doing as often as I can and get out of my own darn way, you mentioned self-righteous, not think that I have all the answers, because gosh, do I love providing the answers. The more I can do that, the more like it kind of looks like pretty cool stuff is showing up, and stuff that's helping other people and stuff that's for the good. So I know that's kind of a general or maybe a vague answer, but that's kind of what's motivating me decision by decision right now. So
Now, what about all that surrender business scares you the most?
um it's interesting because I'll talk to people about, well, you just got your degree and your book just came out. What are you going to be doing a year from now? I really don't know. And the person will say, wait, maybe I didn't ask that question quite right. What are you going to be doing a year from now? And I'll say, I really don't know. No, I heard you, and I'm really not sure. So, I don't know that I'd say it scares me, but it's a uncomfortable conversation for other people to be a part of. And maybe where my mind goes is, oh, look at this person of economic privilege who can sort of afford to be in this situation where, the mortgage is fine, the kid's tuition is fine. And so, he's discerning these things. What a privilege that would be. And by the way, it is a privilege I have, but it's a privilege God gave me. And plastered to my wall is Luke 12:48, which is, everyone to whom much was given, of them much is expected. And I know I've been given a lot, and I know my family and I have worked very hard to nurture and steward all those gifts. But that means that it doesn't mean I get to do less or as much as the next person. It actually means I have to do more, and that's what motivates me. So I don't know that there's really a fear in the surrender. There's just it's a constant sort of check-in of like, stay the course, pal. This is good. There are millions of people who have walked a path like this ahead of you, and they're fine. Ultimately you're fine. Maybe not in this life you're fine, but ultimately that's a good place to be. So stay on it.
You remind us, to those who have been given much, much is expected and asked of them. And you recognize that in your own journey, in your walk. You're going about it and discerning it as it's being revealed. There's that cliche, God never gives you more than you can handle. Do you agree with that or disagree? And let me just not set you up here. I'm going to tell you I disagree, and I'll tell you why.
Okay. So do I agree with God gives us more than we can handle? I think
God will not give us more than
God will not. I'm sorry. Right. Yeah. I think that is true. I think that is part of God's truth. But God also bestowed us with free will. And free will can enable us to do a lot of beautiful things, and ultimately love God voluntarily and of our own free will and own volition, and love each other that way. But free will and the material trappings and the intellectual trappings and the life experience trappings and all the things that we experience in this life can sometimes have us think that, that time frame and that amount of stuff, that equation doesn't work. It's not quite right. This whole 24-hour day, 7-day week, no, it needs to be like 26 hours, and I'm gonna get it done. I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Productivity, everything else. But then ultimately, I think, at one point or another, we all reconcile ourselves to the fact of, oh, you know what, like, God kind of knew what he was doing with the whole 24-hour, 7-day thing. That probably is enough. And as many people have written long before me, if we're not getting done the right things, it means we're trying to do too much. We're not doing the things we're supposed to be doing. So
I believe one of the biggest problems at least successful men have, but most humans have, is failure to prioritize. FTP, right? But going back to that, and BC Nation, I just want to speak to you for a moment here, because man, I used to believe that. I'm like, God will never give me more than I could handle. And then I kept finding myself in these growth situations, meaning pain, suffering, stretching. And I'm like, this is more than I can handle. Like, clearly this is more than I can handle. And I think this is the distinction. God will never give you more than you can handle without him. His strength will be sufficient for what he gives you. Right. Your strength will not be.
Right.
So God will often give you things that are way more than your strength can handle. That's how you grow. If he's not stretching you, you're not increasing in capacity. And if your capacity is not increasing, then you can't love more. You can't contribute more. You can't give more of yourself, which is the calling on your life. Do you get that?
Yeah.
Like, that's a powerful lesson, I think. And I know it was for me in my life. Now, I'm definitely not at the point where, God, please stretch me more.
Right,
Please
right.
give me more. I'm not there. I still grumble. I still resist. Bill, I want to ask you, when it comes to resisting, where do you still resist God in your life?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The thing that I'm working on a lot now, and in fact, I'm in an online Bible plan or an app Bible plan with some other guys working on this is issues around fear, anger, resentment, kind of and sort of maybe anger at the middle of that, and as opposed to the serenity of knowing what I can't control, and as opposed to just being tranquilo when it comes to things getting riled up around me, and knowing that anger, and I believe this, I've written about this, anger is not a primary emotion. Anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is a defense mechanism protecting some underlying gap or void in us. And that gap or void, whatever term it has, ultimately can be filled by embracing God's love and further surrender. And so the struggle I have is, and it's really on an interpersonal basis. I wouldn't say it's as much on a professional basis or other kinds of things, but the struggle I have is allowing that love to fill my soul, to fill my heart as much as possible, so that these petty and sometimes ugly defenses don't have to kind of unnecessarily muster, and sort of guard the gates, sort of thing, when the castle isn't even under attack, kind of thing. So
That is so true. So true. I think, especially for us men, loss of control makes us angry because
mm-hmm.
we feel powerless, right? And powerless men get angry
Yeah.
over time, right? And we just lash out in a rage, right? We just act out. We yell at our wives. We yell at our little precious babies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we feel guilt and shame around it, which increases our loss of control. Why couldn't I hold on to my negative emotions? And
Mm-hmm.
we're in this vicious cycle. And the answer is what you just said: full surrender to God. Are we willing to surrender that loss of control that we feel at different moments of our life? We can't control everything, it's impossible. Are we willing to surrender to Him who can? Man, that was my
Mm-hmm.
biggest,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
biggest, most difficult, hairy breakthrough challenge in my life
Right.
was
Right.
learning that. And it's always sneaking up, always sneaking up. Bill, what do you do right now to strengthen and deepen your faith? Like, what's a consistent routine habit that really works for
Sure.
you and you get
Yeah.
results from?
No, it's a great question, and something I really try and be very intentional about. And um, it sort of exists on multiple levels. And again, a lot of people have written about this, but first and foremost is my one-on-one relationship with God, and the time that I spend every morning in prayer, in reflection, the time I spend just during the day in prayer and reflection. And so making sure, where am I with God? How am I, that whole revelation discernment toggle that I talked about. So that's sort of the core. Secondly is work in small groups. And whether that small group is my marriage, my family, or actual small groups, fellowship groups, Bible study groups. I'm involved in 3 different groups, and I started 2 of them, and one's Catholic, 2 are ecumenical, some are Bible study, some are gospel reflection. But just the chance to intentionally break open the Word with other believers and discern and talk about and debate, argue kind of what that all means. And then more broadly, a church community and the importance of belonging to a church community. So, I'm in my Catholic parish, St. Thomas of Villanova, here outside Philadelphia. I had the chance to lead a discussion last week with our parish community on division and dialogue. And not only within the church community, but more broadly in society, and with the national election cycle coming up and those kind of things. So where am I there? And then more broadly into all of humanity, into all of the kingdom. And that's my unvarnished faith and a lot of those things. So what I really try and do is sort of at every level, whether it's concentric circles or levels, inspect how am I doing? How am I being called? Where's the time sort of going against all those things? And I enjoy sort of playing both on that particular level and out on that universal level.
Mm. What a time for that topic, right?
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. What is in your life right now, what is God showing you that is that greater height he's calling you to, where maybe you feel disqualified, unequipped, not ready, unworthy? What is he showing you?
Yeah, another great question, Joseph. Thank you. I think it is around this idea about division and dialogue. And one of the things that I talk about, whether it's in business settings or church settings or secular settings, is so much of the narrative I feel with people, and particularly people of faith, is the secularization of society, how pluralistic it's gotten, where God has been lost, our values are gone. And it always ends with the refrain, we need to go back. We need to reclaim. We need to get back to the way things were. We need to be undergirded by these values that were the bedrock of the founding of our country or the founding of our society, whatever those things are. And where I'm feeling drawn, and it's totally like white space or blue water or whatever, and that's what makes me a little uneasy about it, is I think about the life and ministry of Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago. And yes, Jesus talked about going back. He would go back to Hebrew scripture and to the sacred word when the leaders of the time had contorted that word for human gain and for human benefit. But his message wasn't to go back. His message was to surge forward. His message was to create a new unified kingdom here on earth for Jews and Gentiles, for everybody, a universal kingdom. To really manifest the idea that everybody was created in God's infinite image and everybody is imbued with divine love, and everyone is called to love God and love each other and love themselves and love and steward and take care of this wonderful creation. And so to me, when I think about, and again, whether it's division in the Catholic Church, division in Christianity, whether it's interfaith issues or like I said, we have another national election cycle coming up. It doesn't sit well with me, this idea about going back, but I don't know what the new future looks like. But what I know to my core, and I'm not smart enough to know what it is, but what I know to my core is that dialogue and civil discourse and reclaiming the ability as a species to disagree without being disagreeable and overcome all the political and media and digital things that want to divide us and prey on the extreme natures of our personhood. If we can get through those things and reclaim the vast common unity and similarities that we have, that I think there's truth and there's beauty and there's love in that. I'm uncomfortable and nervous about it because I don't know what that looks like and I don't know what my role is, but I know it's where I'm being called.
It's such a good and relevant ideal. And I push back here. When you look at the world around us, it's really difficult to ignore the enemy's blatant visibility. No longer hidden, out in the open, satanic, coming for our children. We see it all over the place. So we're at this place where it's hard to ignore the darkness as it's coming in like a storm, yeah? We don't want to despair by any means because we are the salt and light of the kingdom of heaven. However, is that ideal even achievable? Like having rational dialogue with the enemy when he's on attack?
Yeah.
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. What comes to mind for me, because the opposite of the enemy having that evil dialogue at you, the opposite would be evangelizing, speaking to the love of Christ and speaking to the light and how he would write. And where I sit with evangelization is if I try to evangelize somebody or debate somebody or confront or rebut somebody by trying to convince them about how my worldview or my ethos or even my faith lens is a better one than theirs, what I'm basically telling that person is, hey, Joseph, let me tell you how you've been doing life wrong, right? No one likes to be told they're doing life wrong. No one likes to be should on, right? I'm going to come should on you. You should have done this. You should have done that. what I really believe the evangelization is what's the witness of my life? How do I show up to other people? How do I engage with other people? How do I comport myself? How do I manage my time? How do I manage and disperse my resources, my talents and gifts? By the witness of my life is how I can evangelize. And then knowing, to your point from earlier, how much can I bite off? How much can I control? Well, that I can control. I can control right now in this moment. How am I living? And how am I trying to be the arms and legs and try and be the light and try and be the eyes and ears, if you will. So it's not a matter of outsmarting, out tricking, having a better set of facts. I've also become very disenamored with facts because we all have them and they're all true to the extent that facts are true, but they can support very different theses.
And we're in a society where facts are of lesser importance than feelings right now.
Yes. And I used to say facts are stubborn things, and they are, but if we all have facts, it's almost been commoditized to a certain extent.
That's right.
And that's an overgeneralization, believe me. But no, I really do think through dialogue and through me evangelizing by the witness of my life, I'm not sure what more I can do to help move the needle to the good than that. But I think that's enough.
Excellent. Okay. Sometimes how much is enough, BC Nation? Something more than nothing. Yeah. Something more than nothing. Do something more than nothing that God's calling you to do. Go serve one person today if yesterday you served none. That's it. Just improve 1% progress each day. At the end, well done, my good and faithful servant. Your ears shall hear. Bill, this is my time of the show when I invite you to my favorite part, I think, the confession round. I'm going to ask you 10 quick fire questions. You'll have about 3 seconds to answer each. Don't overthink it. It's just for fun. Okay. It's like a game show without the prizes. Are you ready?
All right, sure.
What's your favorite thing about God?
Love.
What is your least favorite thing about God?
How hard it is to see God.
Agreed. I believe we're all struggling with something at any given moment of our life. It's just part of the human condition. What are you currently challenged with right now, either professionally or personally?
I would say earlier about, dealing with anger and resentment and revenge and some of those things, and knowing that they are not an end in of themselves. What is it that they're fronting, and how can I deal with that thing underneath?
Amen. What are you most afraid of?
The safety of my loved ones. Something unthinkable happening to my loved ones.
Sure. What did you spend way too much time doing this past year?
Boy, I don't know. Do I have to pass on that? I'm trying to think.
This is like a deep dive
I
self-assessment.
know it sure is. Way too much time doing this past year. Hey, maybe it was revising things that I wrote instead of going with them because people thought they were good from the jump. I don't know.
Dude, I do that all the time, man.
Yeah.
What secret fear do you have about people?
Oh, that they won't like me.
It's a very common one. What do you wish you had learned sooner about God?
That God is in the everyday. God's not just an hour on Sunday. That God's with me 24/7, and God's part of my life, not sort of in addition to some other parts of my life. That God is, the middle of my life, not, something else somewhere else.
He's not the bookends, right?
Right.
What is a new habit you're going to create this year?
A new habit I'm going to create this year. I'm on a constant quest for moderation. So, and I can moderate, whether it's how I spend my day, whether it's the food that I eat, whether it's, the different people I spend time with. But, that's my holy grail in some ways, is moderation. So however I can have moderation show up, even like you said, in little 1% ways from where it has been. So,
something I've been fasting from is negativity. I'll tell you, man, social negativity. Yeah. Now I'm so sensitive to it. Like I go on one time and I feel my spirit just getting heavy.
Yeah.
And I'm like off. Pick 3 words to describe who you are now.
3 words to describe who I am now. I would say approachable, which is probably a newer word for me. I would say faithful, and I would say hardworking.
Yeah, got it. You seem very approachable to me. Pick 3 words to describe who you were before you had that encounter with Jesus and gave him the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say unapproachable for a lot of the time. Overweight was certainly one. I've had a lot of physical improvement since that time. And I would say ill-tempered.
Yeah, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill, last question. If you could come back to life after you died, look your family and friends in the eye and give them only one piece of advice about God, real relationship with him, what would you say to them?
Oh, a little softball to end things there, huh? I
Exactly.
could come back to life, my family, and tell them one thing about God. I believe, I pray, and I hope that with how things will be in the eternal glory, that I can tell them whatever's getting you down, do your best not to let it get you too down, because just wait, baby, it's going to be awesome.
It's awesome up here. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
don't get down, get up. All
Yeah.
right. Homework assignment for my audience. What is one action BC Nation must take this week if they really want to grow their faith and relationship with God? What homework assignment do you want to give?
I would say for this 1 week to grow their faith and relationship with God is be very intentional about somebody in your life that you don't normally encounter in your life, and reach out to that person about them. Whether it's a relative you're not close with, whether it's a former colleague, whether it's somebody from your school days, but somebody who they pop into your mind. And again, there are no coincidences, but somebody, in my belief, but somebody who's popped into your mind, reach out to that person and reach out and just say, hey, I thought of the other day and I missed where we were. And I just want to see how you're doing. That'd be a great building block.
Amen to that. And BC Nation, if they push back, which is very common, they're like, oh, I'm fine, or just hanging in there, and they give you the short little blow off answer, they were actually just asking, do you really care?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So ask a second time. Always ask a second time. And the second time they normally open.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, how are you? Right? They turn it, they
Right,
spin
exactly.
it. Just ask it again. Well, actually, I'm doing great, but I really just wanted to hear about your life. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And just lean in, and people open up. But first, the defense comes up because most people don't actually care when they ask them. So ask twice. Always ask twice. All right, we're speaking with Bill Yo, and BC Nation. This guy just showed up for us, right? Like, he just gave us time from his life that he'll never get back. He invested into your life. That's a beautiful thing. This is the love of Jesus that we're called to do with each other, right? It's to give of ourselves, our talents, our joy, our stories, the life we live, all of it. Now, BC Nation, if you enjoyed this episode with Bill, please go to Apple Podcast or BrokenCatholic.com or Stitcher Radio, Stitcher.com, and write an honest review about Bill and how he showed up today in this episode. I know he would love to hear from you. If we like what you write, we'll give you a shout out live on the show, which I'm about to do with handle Flow4284. Flow4284, thank you for your 5-star review. She writes, wonderful insights. I enjoy listening to Broken Catholic Podcast. The everyday insights to a strong faith life are very helpful. I recently listened to the latest episode, which discussed the concept of surrendering to Jesus. Hey, that's what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. I found myself thinking about it throughout the next few days. What a wonderful concept. It's more than a concept. It's an invitation from him. It has made me think about, am I really surrendering or rationalizing my behavior? Great common sense insights. Thank you, Flow4284, for your insight. That helps us. And go write your 5-star review now. if you so choose. Bill, where does BC Nation find out more about you? Maybe they're compelled to go pick up your book. What do you got for them?
Sure. No, thank you for that. Yeah. And so the book is called Unvarnished Faith. It's available on Amazon, and you can learn more about it at unvarnishedfaith.com. So just one word, unvarnishedfaith.com. And you can find the book there. You can find other writings I've done, and you can also join my newsletter. And I send out with some regularity different events or musings or beliefs or readings or excerpts from the book or different kinds of things. You can also download the first chapter for free. So
awesome. All right, so go to unvarnishedfaith.com if you feel compelled to. And Bill, thank you for being on Broken Catholic. I wish you God's love, peace, and joy in your life, sir.
thank you, Joseph. God bless you too.
Cheers.